Failure is not an option. How many times have you heard it? However, even the best have failed. This is Fail, Inspiring Resilience, where we celebrate stories of vulnerabilities, adversity, and strength, shared by exceptional people to create a more resilient society. Because failure is indeed not an option, it is required to succeed.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Fail Inspiring the Resilience Together at Home. I'm very excited to be here today. We have a very, very special guest for us. And with me today, I also have Valentina that is co-hosting with me.
Hi, everybody.
Hello. Okay, so my name is Francesco, and I am a postdoctoral associate at MIT, and I am the president of Fail.
My name is Valentina, and I'm a doctoral student at ETH Zurich, and I'm also a member of the team of FAIL.
Fantastic. So, Valentina, do you want to tell us a little bit what FAIL is and what are the rules of the game today?
For those who are here for the first time and they don't know us, so FAIL is a platform which was created with the aim of destigmatizing failure and to create a psychological safety environment, especially in those hyper-competitive environments where stress and anxiety can really affect our productivity and mental health. We usually do this on a stage in person, but we are now all together at home. And so we do it live, and we usually invite speakers, exceptional people that can share their stories of resilience. And let me also tell you about the rules of our game tonight. So we're going to have our guest, and we're going to talk, have a brief chat, but you can also interact, and you can type any questions you might have in the chat of the platform where you're watching tonight.
Absolutely. Thank you, Valentina. And of course, like as always, today we have an exceptional speaker. We have an exceptional guest, and we're very happy that Ethan Fisher is with us today. Ethan Fisher is a keynote speaker, is a mental health advocate, and a resilience coach. And what he basically does, he takes episodes, and basically he takes his own life and everything that happened to him since he was literally a kid, and tries to bring his experience to inspire students, to inspire young adults, and at the end of the day, to inspire everybody to not repeat the same mistakes that he did at some point, but also really to create a better future and share his perspective on life that is very, very, very interesting and full of, again, full of episodes. And but before everything else, I would like to, a video to speak about Ethan, because Ethan was not one of the previously invited speakers at FAIL. It's the first time that we have him. So let's welcome Ethan through his video that introduces himself.
I've basically made every bad decision and choice you can make as a student and as a student athlete. And I'm here to tell you my story. But this story right here, this little 10-minute segment, I gotta be honest with you. This is mentally and physically draining. Because every time I give this story and every time that I practice this speech, I have to relive moments in my life that I'd rather forget. But I do this because I know I'm making an impact. I do this because I have thousands of letters from students just like you who said I changed or saved their life. And I started worrying about what other people thought. It got so bad that I told my parents that I didn't want to live anymore, and I had a knife to my wrist, and I was getting ready to take my own life, and they stopped. 2/3 of all students in this room that are dealing with depression don't talk about it. You're going to see what happens when you don't talk about it. Because not only did I fail out of one school, I failed out of two, I failed out of three. Actually, in my third school, it got so bad when I was so depressed and anxious because my grades were so bad I wasn't going to be able to play. Guess what I ended up doing? I made it up in my mind that I was going to kill myself.
Hello, Ethan. Welcome.
Hello, Francesco. Valentina.
It's great to see you, and it's great to have you here. So So we already saw in your video that there's so many things that happened to you, and really your life has been full of episodes and full of things that really taught you a lot. And we're looking forward to hear from them. But really, I want to start with one very simple question. Like, I know how passionate you are about speaking in front of people, and I know that now your life really is around giving talks in front of students, young adults, and really inspire them. I know how much you care about it. And I also know that 2 days ago, after 6 months of quarantine, like everybody was in lockdown, you finally came back to give a live talk. You finally came back in front of your people to inspire them. So really, I want to start with a positive note. If you can tell us a little bit about how it was to finally come back to life, as normal life as we used to be used to, right? But we forget in the meantime. But you had a taste of it. So tell us how it was to go back to something that you love.
Yeah, it was, it's a moment I'll never forget, because even though it was back to normal and I get to speak in front of, hundreds of college athletes at 2 colleges in Nebraska, it was still a little weird to see everybody wearing masks in the audience and in the, gymnasium. But my first speech that I gave after 6 months, I let it all out. I almost was sweating underneath the brim and my armpits and all that type of stuff, because I gave it my all. Because I'd been dealing with my own set of depression and isolation during the 6 months. I've spent my entire life building this speaking career, and it got swept up from my feet. But it was, I can't even tell you, like, the greatest thing is shooting a basket and winning a game. Well, this is even better than that. This is like getting in front of all these students, and then when they come down and want to shake your hands and hug you and they're crying, that's why I do this. That's the simple reason why I do this, is because I'm helping other people.
Yeah, exactly. And I think like it's super. I mean, you get me a lot. Like every time I hear you speaking, every time I feel you, like I really connect with you. And I think the reason why you're here today is because so many people, I think by now, I would say hundreds of thousands of people connected with your story, and you inspire so much. So it's just a pleasure to have you here and to hear your story in person, to ask you questions, so that also the faith community can benefit from it. Like, really, thank you so much.
Yeah, anytime.
Yes, it is really a pleasure actually to have you here tonight and having this conversation. But so we had a taste of what your story could be about. But since, as Francesco mentioned, we usually invite speakers to those live interviews who were already speakers in the past live on stage. But for Ethan, this is not the case. And so maybe I was thinking you could share your story to our audience.
Yeah. So my story takes place where everybody begins, middle school. Middle school was one of the worst times in my life. It was the first time I ever dealt with depression and suicide and suicidal ideation. And I was an athlete. And as an athlete, you don't talk about mental health. It was taboo. It was stigmatized, where you're weak or soft, or you weren't strong enough to play the games that you wanted to play as a basketball or a football player. So I kept all this stuff locked in, and it got to the point where it was just overflowing. And I ended up, just like the video showed, I had a knife to my wrist, and I was getting ready to end my own life. And that's the thing with mental health. It's happening so widely across the country, but nobody wants to talk about it. People are afraid to talk about it because you're going to get shunned from your own groups. And I was afraid to talk about it in middle school because I didn't want to be that kid that was labeled as crazy. In the late 90s and early 2000s, if you were struggling with something, it was either because you were weak or that you had something wrong with your brain. And so I was so embarrassed and ashamed and shy to even talk about it that I ended up using drugs and alcohol as a coping mechanism. And that's what ended up getting me in worse trouble. And so I used that experience of depression, and I started self-medicating. I used drugs and alcohol. I was drinking almost every day my senior year in high school. And then I started it all the way through my college years. And that's the thing with college. It's here in the US, it's almost a rite of passage. You are on a college campus and everybody's partying every single weekend. It's a part of Greek life. It's a part of athletics. It's a part of every single department on campus. It doesn't discriminate what grades or academic performance that you're going for. And people drink. And when you don't do something, you're not used to it, people that aren't aware or educated on what it can actually do, they drink too much. And it puts themselves in a situation where they're making choices and decisions that they normally wouldn't make. People lose jobs, people lose scholarships, people lose every opportunity they get to be somebody because of a publicized, advertised thing that's on every college campus. It's on every TV station, and people are told that it's okay to drink. And they now are talking about drink responsibly and make sure you have a DD. But when you're drinking, people don't think about it like that. And so I took that alcohol, and when I hit my freshman year in college, it was drink, drink, drink until 3 o'clock in the morning. And then I'd get up and I'd go to practice, and I played at 5 college basketball programs, but failed out of all 5 of them because by the time I hit semester, I drunk myself or did as many drugs as I could to basically be ineligible, and I would jump ship and go to another program. But nobody knew, like during that time of my 5 schools, the alcohol was masking that suicidal ideation. And a lot of people don't realize that from my freshman year in college to when I was 23, I spent almost every single day drinking to die. I would grab a bottle and I would sit in my room at my parents' house. I'd grab a bottle at a party and I would cross my fingers and hope that I wouldn't wake up the next morning. And I was an athlete, so I was embarrassed. I didn't know that it was okay to talk to anybody. And so when you're embarrassed to talk about your mental health, it's one of those problems, like you just feel so bad and you feel alone and isolated. And I isolated myself until the night of the accident. And the accident happened when I was 23 years old, where I was drinking at a house party like everybody else. And I woke up in a 24-hour blackout from drinking wine for the first time and found out that I drunk drove and killed somebody. And every day of my life since that point has been a struggle. Because every day that I'm alive, I think about Bill, which was his first name. I think about Bill and his family. And every single day I have to realize what happened. And I've been struggling with that. I didn't forgive myself until about 2 years ago, which means I was going for almost 16 years of this self-hate and disappointment and anger and fear and embarrassment of I made these choices and put myself in a position because I didn't address my mental health. Now, I want to get one thing clear. I don't, and I will never blame my mental health. I'll never blame my depression on me drinking and driving. That was a conscious choice that I made. And I can't fault myself for that. I have to live with the responsibility of what choice I made that night. But if I would have addressed this mental health stigma before, who knows where my life would be? Who knows what I could have done or not done, or if I would have graduated a lot earlier. But here's the thing about life and failure. After failing out of 5 college programs, I went to prison and decided that I wanted to change my life, and I was tired of failing. And I somehow, some way, I made it through prison and decided I wanted to go back to school. And I went back to school as a 28, 29, and 30-year-old inmate of Colorado and played college basketball as a 28-year-old man. I was the oldest dude on my basketball team. I had 19, 20-year-old teammates who were making fun of me because they're like, oh, Fish, man, your back's going to go out. Your knees are bad. And if you ever seen the movie with Will Ferrell, they used to make fun of me and say I got traded for a washing machine. But the thing about it is I was so tired of failing that I wanted to help other people. And when I went back to school, you know, basketball was easy. I played for 2 years and then ended up coaching college basketball for 3 years after that. But during that process, I wanted to go back to prove everybody that I could change. And I was just tired of being a bum. And I went back to school and I got 2 bachelor degrees, 3 minors, a master's degree, and I graduated with honors in all of them. Like, I was awarded the Entrepreneur Student of the Year award for the business plan that I wrote in prison with a bunch of inmates on trying to create jobs so that they could have a good life when they got out and realize that their entire life they could change as well, and that they weren't stuck in this pit of failure and despair for the rest of their lives. And no matter who you are or where you come from, we all have the ability, and some it's a little bit easier, but we all have the ability to change our lives based off of choices. And people, I wear this every time that I can, because I believe when you have this desire, like a burning desire inside that you want to change or you want to address certain issues, like you can change. And when I got out of prison, I decided I was going to change, and I went back and got those degrees because I wanted to prove everybody wrong that I wasn't a dummy. I just was not in the right place. I didn't have my head right. I wasn't addressing the main issue, which is always going to come back to mental health. And that's the thing when I plead with students. I plead with students and I beg students in all my speeches. If you are struggling, if you have depression or anxiety or anorexia or bulimia, or if you work too hard, you need to talk to somebody, because when you keep it locked up, bad things happen. I would rather have you call me. I'd rather have you call one of the countless internet sites now that allow you to have a counseling online, where 10 years ago you didn't have that resource. So you don't have to feel embarrassed. You don't have to feel ashamed to go see a counselor in your college or have your coworker see you. Now you can do it on your phone and in your room. So you have this safety net that won't stigmatize you, be so, seen to the public as somebody that's dealing with something. But we've talked about the numbers, and at any given point in time, anywhere between 20 and 25 people on this planet are dealing with some type of diagnosable mental health issue. That's a quarter of the population. That means everybody's got something going on. And then when you actually think about it, it would be much higher, because people are going to go with depression one year and then they might not the next year. But at any given point in time, you think everybody's dealt with something, whether it's failing out of school or your parents got a divorce, or you're adopted, or you don't have any money and you're financially broke. Everybody right now that's in this state of isolation from COVID, this is causing more mental health issues, because people are losing jobs, they're losing businesses. And like we talked about at the beginning of this, I didn't get to speak for 6 months. That's my life. I've spent 6-7 years trying to build my companies up to be able to speak as much as possible, and it all got wiped out from under me. And I'm not going to be one person that lies about it. I was not doing well, because I care so much about helping others and at my job that I didn't get to do it. And I felt like I wasn't living up to my purpose or my potential. And I had to talk to a counselor. I had to, I'm lucky I've got an amazing, beautiful wife, because if it wasn't for her, I don't know how deep I could have got. And I also have 2 really cool bulldogs, so they helped a lot too. But it's something that I've taken upon myself, and the media is doing it now more, and it's being more widely accepted that people struggle. But the biggest thing, and this is why I'm so glad I get to work with you guys at Fail, is just opening that dialogue. Like, people shouldn't be afraid to address these issues. If you have a sprained ankle or a shoulder or a rotator cuff that's torn out, you don't just sit there and on a couch and not talk about it. You go to a doctor. It's the same thing with what you're dealing with inside of your head. If you were dealing with some mental fog, or you're not feeling good and you have dark days and it feels like there's black clouds around you, go see somebody. Go see somebody. It's not that hard. And it takes, once you do it, it makes your life so much better. But you're going to always have to address these issues, because you're going to have things that keep coming up. And I've learned over these years of all the adversity and my resilient way of approaching life. I always have to go back to my toolboxes and figure out what things work for me when I have my own depressive episodes. So anybody can meditate, they can work out, they can read, they can write, they can start new speeches. I mean, I created 3 new speeches during this break, because you have to keep your mind occupied, because when you just sit there in self-loathing, that's when the bad things happen. That's when you need to reach out.
Yeah. So first of all, Ethan, really thank you so much for sharing your story. I think everybody now can relate with how much that is powerful, and how much that can teach everybody, and the real meaning of it. I think you are a living proof of resilience. I think you really are a person that really cares about students, that really cares about people, and really can help out. You touched upon so many topics. You touched upon, dropping out of school. You touched upon the need for people to speak out, to find a platform to discuss all the problems that they have. You touched upon drinking and driving, which is a huge deal. It's a huge deal all over the world, and we need to be aware as soon as possible. As you said, it happened to you at 23, can happen at any age, right? So I think there's so much on that, and you're really a living proof of resilience. You really prove that change is possible, and this is so amazing. But I want really, like, on your story, I really want to get for 1 second to the roots. So you said at the beginning of your story that the pressure sometimes of your peers, like the need of that each of us have as to integrate in any context, like we want to belong, we want to fit in, right? Sometimes it comes with doing things we really don't want to do. Sometimes it comes with doing things that are dangerous to us, are dangerous to ourselves, to others. And we all had that type of experience. I went through it myself. I think everybody in the world went through it went through it themselves. And it's just a huge problem. And that's where everything starts. So we see this also not just when you're in 8th or 10th grade, but also when you are in college, etc. Like, there's a lot of peer pressure. There's a lot of imposter syndrome. If you are in, for instance, colleges like MIT, for instance, we can relate a lot to it, hyper-competitive environment. So my question for you is really, when it comes to integrate, which is extremely important for everybody, for each of us to really to fit in, how do you manage those, that equilibrium? How do you manage to please other, but really don't do anything that eventually can harm yourself, can harm others? How can you find a way? Because I don't have an answer. It's extremely hard, but probably you have a better perspective than most of us since you went through a lot. How can people fit in without endangering themselves?
Yeah. So the older I got, it got a lot easier. I don't hang out or associate with any of the friends that I used to drink with. And I made a conscious decision to do that. Now, I'm not saying that they're bad people and they have families, and some of them are really good people in the community and they help and do all that. But I chose to make a decision to get away from them so I'd never be influenced in that same way. Now, I break it down when I do my speeches. I have a middle school speech, I have a high school speech, and I've got a college speech. And so when I'm working with middle school kids, it's about addressing those issues and saying, hey, you're not alone. You're struggling. I know it. You're dealing with something. And I try to get the point across that they don't realize that 8th grade isn't the last year of their life. 9th grade is not the last year of their life, so that they have the ability to like, they can actually create their entire life by meeting new friends. And I know it's a difficult thing. And so I get about 100 kids after every event coming up to speak to me, and they'll ask me questions about, well, should I hang out with this person or should I hang out with this person? And my first question to them is, well, is that kid going to get you in trouble? And they say, yeah. Well, then I said, you answered your own question. Now you got to be strong enough yourself to be able to handle that. And no matter what age you are, there's always going to be a pressure, from your peers. You're going to be impacted, influenced on what to do. And the older you get, when you get to somebody that's in college, they're old enough to make a choice. If you know those individuals that you're studying with or you're hanging out with during school are getting you in trouble, you got to cut them off. And nobody can make that decision but yourself. And if you realize you're hanging out with the wrong people, then you need to make a better choice. And that's what my entire speech I talk about all the time is choices and decisions. They have the ability at that moment to choose. And it's a little bit harder when they're younger, but
yes,
you can always choose to go with somebody else, When I work with inmates, they all want to go back to where they grew up when they get out of prison. And my first question to them is, weren't those the individuals that helped put you in prison in the first place? You've got to disassociate yourself from the people who are going to get you in trouble. And I forget what author talks about it, but basically he says you are the sum total of the 5 people you hang out with all the time. So I chose to hang out with my family and my wife instead of anybody else. So I'm the sum total of my family because they're my best friends. They're my family. I love them. And I want to spend all my time with them versus spending time with people who aren't going to help push me in the right direction, because I lived that life. I hung out with people who weren't getting any better for me. And I had to make that choice. And it's been hard. I've lost a lot of friends, but I'm confident in who I am and what I'm doing. And I love what I'm doing. And I'm not going to let anybody stop that.
Totally get it. Like one of the things that but I really care about mentioning now that you said this, like a role model. Okay, so we usually look up to somebody. When you're a kid, especially when you're super young, the role model usually is the bad guy. Okay, so it's crazy, right? Like you, the more you grow up, the more like, I don't know, the more you grow up, the more that the role model becomes a person that achieves some sort of success, whatever is your definition of success. But someone that inspires you for the good. But usually, especially when you're super young, the person that really rules the world, really rules your world, rules the school, is often the bad guy, the guy that bullies everybody, right? So you look up to that type of role model, and you think that you need to be like that so that people will like you at the end of the day. And I think that is detrimental to everybody's mental health, is detrimental to, but there has to be something that people, like us in our position, like let's say grown up, like young adults or adults, can do to change that environment, that behavior, that belief. But it's again, it's extremely hard. I don't know if you have something to add, just a little bit on top of that.
Well, it's extremely hard, but when I work with those middle school kids, I think that's the most impressionable age out there, because they're on the fence of whether or not they're going to do right or they're going to do wrong. And for some reason, like the ability to speak in front of a large group of audience of impressionable high school and middle school kids, and they can see that the choices I made were actually the ones that they see each and every day. Some of it clicks with them, and then they're no longer trying to pursue that path of being the bad person or the bully. But it is such a hard question to answer, because every individual is different. One person is going to be impacted by somebody who plays in the NBA. One person is going to look at a role model that's a celebrity or entertainer, a musician, or somebody's going to look at somebody that's got their doctorate and they're going to want to follow them. So every single kid that goes through school is their own person. And it's so hard to adapt an entire, program to get every single individual. If, it's the same with sobriety. If you found a pill that would cure alcoholism, you would save the world. If we could find a cure to prevent every kid from making poor choices, like we'd change the world, but I think sometimes that's what happens. And I've spoke at so many schools, and I think I told you this example.
Yeah.
I spoke to 6 or 4 schools, and they had 6,000 kids in the district. And I had 250 letters and emails from kids who were talking about suicide and drug overdose at 13 years old, and they had one counselor. So how are these kids supposed to have any individualized work or anybody help them when they have one counselor for 6,000 students in a district?
Yeah, any real support, yeah.
And so that's why it's so hard for this generation. And then, don't get me started on social media.
Yeah.
That peer pressure.
Can follow up on that.
Yeah, that peer pressure is exponentially great. Like, you're getting bullied from people across the planet. You don't know who they are. You post a picture and they're going to say you weren't cute enough or cool enough or smart enough. And you, like, the peer pressure that everybody's on now with social media is causing these mental health issues. There are significant studies that show statistics of an increase in suicide, 30% in boys and 50% in females since 2007. And that's when social media started to become popular. It's our generation right now, this whole world is dealing with so many issues, and social media is a big problem with some of these kids, but at the same time, I found you guys through social media. And so if you use it the right way, we can actually create a platform to help some of these individuals that don't get that individualized help. And that's, that's what you guys want to do at Fail. And that's what you're doing. And it's amazing because you're giving a platform to people who are afraid to reach out or afraid to talk about it.
That's really true. And also for us, it even allows us to connect with so many parts of the world, because our team is very widely spread. And I think in this very exceptional time, the social media have given us an opportunity, really great, to share our message and maybe reach even more people. Because, you know, as you said, it's much easier to be behind a screen and not just sitting in person and like show your face and admit that maybe you're there, because you share the same feelings. And I think, we are also taking advantage in a very good way of this.
Yeah.
But you mentioned many times that even in your intro video about your relationship with kids, and I was really curious, like, what does it feel like to receive those letters, and why are they really your target? I guess because they're more they're in an age where you can still be of a greater influence, or they need bigger help.
Yeah. No, my heart is with the youth. I know I could work and mold myself to work in corporate, and that's an area that needs it, because that's where most suicides actually happen. But when I get to work with these students, and you're looking at a kid that's 12 or 13 years old, and they're coming up to you and they're crying their eyes out, and they're pouring out their heart to you because they just went through something that they don't think anybody else has ever gone through. When you're a middle school or high school kid, you think everything that you're living in that moment is you're the only person on that planet. And when I come in and I get to be vulnerable with them, and they see this tattooed and beard, and, you know, I used to cuss in my videos and stuff like that, they feel like they're able to open up, because I'm not trying to put on a fake front. And honestly, I'm fueled by working with schools because of those letters that you mentioned. Like, I can sit there, I've got stacks and stacks and folders with handwritten notes from kids. And then my entire Instagram and Facebook are these lives from these young kids who are reaching out to me. And that shows so much strength, because I know if I was in their age, I don't think I would have reached out to myself, because I would have been so scared. I would have been timid because I was just this shy individual. But it shows that these kids have strength. And if they're willing to reach out to me, then they're going to be open to actually change if I give them the right information or I make them feel safe. And that, for me, that's changing. If you talk about a sundial, when, if you just change it 1 degree, your entire path for that student is completely changed. And so if I can get a student in 8th grade or 9th grade or 6th grade not drinking or partying, I just changed their entire life. Not just that 5 minutes that they talk to me when I'm speaking, or the 10 minutes that they're waiting in line, or the hour-long keynote. I have the ability to change somebody's life completely. And that is the essential part of why I do this, because these kids, and it's just from my experience, I could have changed my entire life if I would have seen a counselor, if I would have never drank, or if I would have never smoked weed. If I would have never done any of those things, my life would be completely different. Now, I could have still made those choices in college, but at that given point in time, my life would have been completely different than what it is now. And I have to live every day with that regret of getting behind the vehicle in 2003. I have to live with that. I don't want these kids to go through it. I don't want college students to go through it. I don't want parents and adults to go through it. I love Uber. I love Lyft, because they've helped cut down drunk driving. And people need to be able to use those resources, because I've gone to fundraisers. I've gone to NFL Super Bowl parties, and you have business owners, mothers and fathers who are drinking, and then they get in the car with their kids and they drive home, and they're not thinking about it. What's going to happen? And it's a part of my speech, but every 53 minutes, somebody's killed by a drunk driver in this country. That's something that could be prevented. I know for a fact my accident could have been prevented if I would have addressed the issues that I was dealing with when I was younger. And so that's why I love working with the youth, because I can stop them from making those choices later on down the road.
Yeah, and I really believe that, Ethan, you are doing that. Like I'm pretty sure, again, you have a lot of feedback on it, and you know how many people you're actually helping out, and definitely the karma is on your side. Let me say that. But like something that I really want to ask you, and that actually is a question that Jenny from the Fail team had in the first place for you, and I want to share it with you, is like, you do a very hard job. Like your job is very hard, because as a speaker and a motivational speaker and telling your story every day, you go through over and over and over your story. And most people in your position, or just most people in general, when there's something bad happened to them, they want to forget rather than remember that every day. But I think it's also part of the process of, like digesting that type of experience, etc. But I think, again, it's extremely hard. How do you make it happen? How do you cope with it? How do where do you find the strength every day to remember that, to forgive yourself and help others through your story?
So one of the biggest things for me is faith, my family, and Bill's family. Those are my three pillars of, I can't let any of those individuals down. I believe I survived the accident for a reason, and I truly believe that my purpose is to do what I'm doing now. And the motivation that I get when I see that, because I have accident pictures in my keynote, and I have to relive those moments every day, like you were saying. And I just think about Bill and his family, and that pushes me through that, because I don't want to do it. There's days I don't want to do it. Let's just be honest. It's hard. But I think about Bill and his family and how I can't let them down. And I want them to understand, like, I work extremely hard to make sure that nobody has to live their experience. And then I think about my family. If it wasn't for my family, I wouldn't be here either, because my mom and dad and my brothers, they stuck with me by my side when I was struggling with all this stuff, and they were always there to help. And now my family includes my wife, and she's been huge, like I alluded to during this pandemic. If it wasn't for her, I don't know how I'd be during this 6 months of not speaking and feeling like a bum, because she's been there for me. She's been a rock. And I've just been blessed with a lot of great people to help me. But those are my reasons why I do this, because I know they believe in me, and that's all I need to keep pushing each and every single day. Because when they believe in me, and then I get the letters from the kids, I don't need any other fuel. That sparks this desire inside for me to speak. That's all I need, is just those things. But it's hard. It's really hard.
Yeah, absolutely. But again, as we mentioned over and over, it's completely worth it. And everybody, thank you, starting from us. And, thank you all again for being with us today and share it again, your story.
Yes. And also, I feel like every time that you give a speech, yes, you're doing it because you really believe that this is going to help others, but at the same time, it must be, I can only imagine, a very painful moment where you need to live again your all your stories, all you went through.
Yeah. So one of the biggest things that I actually do struggle with is not just my speech, but it's the letters that I get from the kids. I've had letters where 13-year-old kids told me that they had slit their wrist multiple times. And I've actually had students come up to me where they would show me the scar on their wrist. And I want to break down. I want to cry. But I have to be strong for that young kid right there, because if I show any weakness to them on that moment, they're going to feel like they did something wrong, or they're going to feel like it's not safe. And so I internalize it, and I hold it in myself, and then I let it loose when I go to the gym or something like that. But the stories that I hear from the kids is it's heartbreaking, because they're in a position where it's so hard for them to change who they are at that point because of their parents or the people around them. And I have to mandatorily report. So if a kid tells me that something like that, I have to go to the principal or the administration. And that's been one of those issues too, of bringing this news to them. And then the administration's like, I know we've tried to get them out of their foster home, but they can't. We've tried to make sure that their dad doesn't, alcohol and drive drunk with them, but we can't control what happens outside of the school boundaries. So a lot of these kids are just growing up with the deck stacked against them, and what are they going to do? And so my only job I can do is provide hope. I can sit here and say, yes, you're going to make it through this. You're going to have the ability to change your life. Just find a way to get through this middle school. Find a way to get through your high school, and then you can start creating these choices on your own when you're 18 and living on your own. Then you can create the life that you want. But you got to give them hope at that point, because they're breaking down in front of me, and it takes so much strength to do that.
Yes, and I think the numbers maybe do not allow to have a person who follows up with them, like with each of them, and checks how they are. And you also at the same time need to be very strong to be like a role model for them. So but I think really your story is so powerful that you do not need to say, yeah, you're gonna make it, because you're showing it with some examples. And I think this is more powerful than words.
Yeah, I'm gonna probably butcher this because I always do, but Maya Angelou said, something to the effect that people aren't going to remember what you say, but they're going to remember how you made them feel. And when I'm doing my keynote and when I'm working with these students, that's one of the focuses I'm trying to do, is try to make them feel something. So I have blackout scenes, and I've got points in the speech where I'm trying to make these kids think of everybody that they love, every person that means something to them, and have them wake up out of this blackout scene to sitting in the hospital bed, where I have a hospital picture myself, and I'm laying in that hospital bed deciding what's going to happen in my life. And so I try to make them feel all these emotions, and I intentionally take them on this roller coaster of my life, because when you look at all those diagrams of success, everybody thinks success is A to B, a straight diagonal up. But anybody that knows life and business and your whole entire what fail is about is you're going to be squiggly lines. You're going all over the place, because that's what life is. It's not this one straight shot. You're going to do this, you're going to do that, and then it's over. Life is difficult no matter how many good choices you make. Life is going to throw you obstacles and roadblocks. You're going to have people that tell you can't do something. You're going to have coworkers that make fun of you or try to bring you down. You're going to have, business owners who treat their employees bad, even though you're doing a great job, but they're not going to treat you right. You're going to have to find those ways to learn how to fail forward. I mean, that's what it comes down to. Everybody's going to face fears and failures at some point, but you have to be able to fail forward and find a way to get your end desires or your end goals. And one of the keys that I use with all my students is I've got 5 keys to success for students, and one of them is actually setting goals. And ever since the accident, I've been setting goals every day of my life. And I've got weekly goals, monthly goals, yearly goals. I got goals for the next 20 years of my life, because I want to have something that I can focus on. And when you tell students that if they write it down and they see it every day, they're gonna try to make it happen. And I believe in the law of attraction. So, I've got pictures of houses on my phone and car. Like, I believe in that stuff because I want to be able to see it come to fruition in the future. And I work towards it because I don't want to look back. Yeah, I speak about my past, but I use it as a stepping stone to go somewhere further. And I'm going to fail at business. I'm going to fail at my nonprofit. I failed as a speaker my first year. I was horrible. And then I just kept working. So my mentor is Tommy Spalding, one of the best speakers in the world. He's a New York Times bestseller. I love him to death. he invited me to his leadership academy 5 years ago, and I spoke. And then last year, he actually pulled me up and said, when I invited Ethan to my academy 5 years ago, he was the worst speaker I've ever seen. And my heart,
what a pleasure.
yeah, my heart just like, I was like, oh, like it hit me.
This is so good.
But he turned around and he told me, he goes, now you're the best speaker at my conference. And I outrank him every time. But it's because I work so hard at this craft because I know how important it is. Like part of my speech, and you guys might get a crack out of this, like I've got social anxiety. I intentionally failed college courses so I wouldn't have to do my final project. So if I showed up to a class and the first, 2 days when you're going through the syllabus and they're like, you got a midterm project and you have to present, I told my group, I'm saying, I'm not going to present. And if they said, well, okay, we'll help you, you'll be okay, then I passed that class. But if they said, no, you've got to do your part, I never showed up again because I didn't want to do that. I've got such a fear of public speaking and social anxiety. Like I quit classes because I didn't want to have to talk to people. And now I've come full circle because I'm motivated by something different. I have a higher purpose, a higher passion, and that's why I can stand in front of 2,600 students and pour my heart and soul out because I've worked at it. But I was.
But you had a lot of room for improvement. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, when you start at the bottom of like the work,
according to Thomas Spalding, you had a lot of room for improvement.
But actually, I think that the concept of the straight line, of the success, is just because we don't see the up and downs because people do not share it, and this is why Fail was born. And I think it's very important. Even in academia, we try again and again, maybe experiments that other people tried, and we are wasting money and material just because we don't know that doesn't work because nobody says it. But actually, speaking about Fail, one of the topics that tonight we haven't talked so much about is your very unique perspective as an athlete. And I think when you're an athlete, you also work so hard to achieve your goals and like to prepare. I don't know, for example, when you want to participate in the Olympics and then you fail. And do you know like how many stories like this do you know? And like, can you tell us a little bit about your experience as an athlete?
Yeah, so I was a small kid, so I wasn't really recruited out of high school. So I had to go to what they call a JUCO or a community college because I wasn't good enough to play at a Division I school or a big school. And when you go to that, a lot of people look at a junior college as failure the first time you get to play. Like you couldn't play at a big Division I or Division II school and you're going to a JUCO. So you're already kind of categorized as a failure because you either didn't get your grades or you just weren't good enough to play at the next level. And so when you have that going on, you can either use that as motivation like I did and said, I'm good enough, I can play at higher levels, or you're going to, fail and you're going to stop. And that's the problem with people who fail. Failure is not necessarily that you get stopped. It's if you push through it, it's not a failure. But if you hit a roadblock and the coach doesn't like me and I stop trying to play basketball, that's a failure because you just give up. And I had 5 different coaches tell me that my grades weren't good enough and I failed out, but I kept failing forward and saying, I can play. I know I can. And, I didn't make the right decisions and choices, but I ultimately ended up playing again and had opportunities to play, older in my career. I got invited to play, some small-time professional basketball, but I was too old and my body couldn't handle it. But athletics and academics, I think, are actually one and the same. Because you work so hard in middle school and you work so hard in high school to get the 4.0 or to get recruited that you put all this pressure on yourself. And what people don't understand, the competitive nature of both of them is that you're under this microscope. And you're not just under the microscope for yourself. You've got the high school, you've got your peers, you've got the community, you've got the universities, and they're nitpicking every single fault of yours and saying, well, they didn't get this on the SAT or a high enough score on the ACT, so they're not good enough to get into this school, or you're 6 foot and not 6'2", so you're not going to get recruited to play Division I basketball. So people nitpick, and you're under this microscope, and that pressure, you don't have a release, because if you go and talk to your peers, they're not equipped to handle that, because they're going through the same thing. And then you go and try to talk to a coach or a professor or whoever gave you a scholarship to go to an Ivy League school. If you talk about that weakness or that point that you think you're going to fail, they see that as, this person's not strong enough to be a part of my team. They're already coming to me and they got weaknesses, and I don't think they're going to make it. So we're all under this microscope, no matter what it is. And my speaking company, which I call it Undrafted, I look at it, and it's not just for sports. Every person that's going to college for a bachelor's degree or master's degree or a doctorate, whatever they're doing, they're going to school to be drafted in whatever job that they want. So they're trying to work their way up to be the number 1 draft pick in whatever, academic performance or degree that they want. And it's the same with sports. You work all the way through your high school career, and you're trying to be the best student athlete in the state of Colorado so that you can get a Division I scholarship and be drafted to that D1 school. So the whole concept of it is every single person is undrafted if you think about it. No matter who you are, what future or what background you have, you're trying to do something to end up at point B, which is actually a squiggly line to get all the way there. So yeah.
Yeah. So Ethan, also, like as you know, like basketball is also something that means a lot to me. Like I also played basketball for many years, and that I want to use this topic to bridge for a very quick follow-up before Valentina can ask a couple of questions that we have from the audience. Like for me, basketball, as much as music, have been passions for me. Like I was completely, and I still am, especially with music, because I'm too old for basketball, but for music I'm still okay. I'm extremely, I was so much into them, and that they helped me so much the hard times and the hard days. And the reason why for me that was particularly important was that I was belonging to a community. A community of people, like my team, my basketball team was also, my friends, and also the band, my band Phantom. They basically my friends and people that it's just amazing people that I have around me, and those were my communities. Like when I was a kid, and I want to you to comment on the passions and the importance of community and to create them.
Yeah. So yeah, we're in the same boat, basketball and music. Like, this is always hard to admit, but basketball and music saved my life when I was in middle school. If it wasn't for those two things, I don't think I would be alive right now. I love my family, and they've been there for me. But during those years of darkness, it was Tupac and Allen Iverson and Jason Williams.
Yes. I have 3 T-shirts of Allen Iverson. I didn't know that.
Yeah, there we go.
76ers.
Yeah, number 3. There we go. AI. So again, see, but like you just said, basketball is a community, and all my friends have been basketball players. Until I started the speaking career, I didn't really have friends that weren't playing college basketball or who weren't trying to be hip hop artists, so those things build that, that camaraderie where you have friends built for life. And that's something that I will never forget. I miss my friends. I miss basketball. I miss being around those guys, because the speaker industry, I don't have the same relationships with them that I used to, because I'm too old and I can't play. And I'm not coaching anymore, so I don't get to hang out with the guys every single day for 2 hours in the gym. So my social life has completely just dropped. But now I've started to build relationships with student life and student activities and people who book me because I want to keep coming back to their campus. And so I'm starting to learn how to build those bonds with other people. And before this COVID thing hit, I thought I could actually be isolated and have a great life with just my wife and my dogs. And I didn't really need any friendship or people to talk to. But now that I've been speaking, I quickly found out that I need people in my life. And when you look at people who are struggling with depression or anxiety, they're isolated a lot of times. And it's not just, being locked up in their room or their house. They're isolated when they go out in the community because they don't have any friends. They don't have anybody that they can talk to. And that's when depression starts. And then that's when, self-medicating with alcohol and drugs, because they don't have anybody to feel safe with, to be vulnerable with, to talk to. So, I think one thing that I do with all my speeches and students is I try to give them a pass for me and say, hey, if you guys ever need somebody, I'm going to be that contact person. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a lawyer. I can't prescribe you anything, but if you come to me and you want to talk, I'll talk with you until I need to send you to somebody that can actually help you as a professional. But building that bond and that dialogue, again, that's to the beginning of why we're speaking. You just open this conversation and be vulnerable, and that'll help save people's lives.
Yes,
Absolutely.
for sure. Sharing and talking about it, it's the best thing that we can do to start addressing those problems. Actually, you mentioned that music and sports saved your life when you were in middle school. And we have a question regarding that from our audience on YouTube, from Canary. I don't know, I'm sorry if I'm spelling the name wrong. The question is, what would you tell yourself if you could meet yourself back in middle school?
I love that question. I get that a lot. I'll go back and tell myself that 8th grade isn't the end of my life, that I have so many opportunities if I just learned how to work hard. If I would have had the same work ethic that I do now when I was an 8th grader in high school, I probably could have made it to my dreams. But because I gave in to alcohol and the peer pressure and smoking, I never got to live my dreams. And I'm going to regret that the rest of my life. I'm always going to regret the night of the accident. That's the worst moment in my life. But if I would have addressed my issues of mental health or just learning how to actually work hard and not give in to people saying that I wasn't going to be able to make it, I think my life would be completely different. So, that everybody uses that thought of hindsight, what would you do? But if I could get myself to stop drinking and not use drugs and actually work hard, that's what I would try to do.
Maybe you should have met yourself now back then when you were in middle school, and then you could have advised yourself.
Yeah, I would have loved to have done that because, people always say overnight success, but there's people in the NBA, there's people in academia that people like Einstein, you're never going to make it. You're not smart enough. Yeah, he never stopped. JJ Barrera, one of the smallest guys in the NBA. People were telling him he wasn't smart enough or tall enough to play, and he's been in the NBA for 14 years. So, to give in, I wish I would have never done that, because now I don't give in. I won't let myself give in. My job now as a speaker, I'm trying to be the best speaker out there. So I use that as a competitive nature and a competitive spirit that I wish I would have, molded differently as a kid.
Yeah, that's great. And Ethan, so I think everybody's loving this conversation, and we could move on for another hour probably if we don't stop at some point. But I think it's time to make some final remarks. But and to do so, I want to combine a final point that I know you want to make and the second question from the audience. So basically, Charisse is asking, what's the process you underwent to create this powerful mindset of the resilience? That I know it ties up with the final point that you want to make about the importance of sharing, the importance of, again, like sharing vulnerabilities and mental health, and understanding that is a priority. And our platform like this can help inspiring that process of resilience. So,
yeah, so I actually attribute the military DOC boot camp that I went through in prison as one of the most important times in my life, because I had real drill instructors who basically mentally and physically tried to crack me. And they gave us all these tools and ability to work through hard times. Like they had us bear crawling in snow and shoveling snow with our backs. So they put us through all these physical and mental, rigors of just these difficulties, but we learned how to get through them. And when I learned how to do that, it made the rest of my life easier. So I started taking accountability for myself, because that was a big piece of the military and the prison sentence. I had to take accountability. And when I started taking accountability and learning the discipline and routine of that military DOC boot camp, I applied that to the rest of my life. So during this whole COVID thing, I've been getting up at 4 a.m. I do push-ups every morning as soon as I get up. I pray every day. I do all these things, make my bed. I do all these different types of things that I learned from the military to help catapult my career to where it is now. Because in prison, I didn't think about being a speaker. I didn't think about being a speaker until 2012, actually. And I saw a speaker and I was like, okay, I'm going to do that. I don't know how, but I'm going to make it happen. And I guess the rest is history.
Yes, absolutely. So, Valentina, do you have a final question? Do you have some final remarks for Ethan?
Yeah, I think it was a really great decision, the one of becoming a speaker, and it takes a lot of efforts and put really yourself out there. So, and thank you so much for sharing it with us tonight.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm sure that this is not the last time we're gonna have Ethan joining us. I think there is too much synergy. No, it's never too much. So much synergy, so that we can create some content and we can create a lot of different activities for the future. We keep working together. I didn't want to spoil this until it's official on a live interview, but I think it's going to happen. So why not just saying that? And yes, and I think I would like to take advantage of this moment to really remind everybody that you can follow the Fail platform online. We are on Facebook, we are on Instagram, we are on LinkedIn, we are literally on YouTube, everywhere. Like our pages to get more contents and to get more inspiring talks. We're gonna keep doing these live interviews, and our upcoming event is gonna be with an amazing speaker. She's Gretchen Jerzina, and yes, you're gonna find out how amazing she is when we meet her on October 15th. And thank you everybody for being here with us today. Thank you, Valentina. Thank you, Ethan, for sharing your story and for inspiring us. And I think to the next time we're going to do something together, I guess.
Yes. Thank you for the amazing conversation.
Thank you both. That was awesome.
Thank you so much. Bye, everybody. See you soon.